You saw it in the title, folks, the 333 bet. Now you might be wondering what in the world the 333 bet is. Basically, it's something that I actually thought of on the spot a few days ago, where I'm essentially making a big, bold prediction as to what will happen 333 days from today, July 23rd. Funny enough, 333 days from now is June 21st of next year. And using the various information and misinformation that has been spread around on TV, on social media, these last 3 to 4 months regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, I am going to make, like I said, some very, very bold predictions, and some of which I won't blame you for thinking if they are utterly ridiculous and just wishful thinking. Look, the way society has been impacted by this virus has been remarkable, and not in a good way. In some places, the nature of this virus seems to be burning out, and the recovery rate has soared over the last month to be over 50% of the total cumulative cases. Places are reopening up gingerly, and only a very small isolated pockets of are flaring up, only to extinguish rather quickly. Also, more and more people are starting to see that this is just one big charade politically, given that 2020 is an election year. I will admit, yes, the virus was terrible back in March and April, and you can even make the argument that today, in some places, it is still very terrible. And it's very terrible especially to our elderly and those who have diseases like cancer, diabetes, and any other pre-existing condition that hampers the immune system to function properly. But now we have more knowledge as to how this virus behaves and how other coronaviruses influence the behavior of the SARS-CoV-2. And with that being said, I have 7 predictions as to what will happen 333 days from now. I have 7 because I know 7 is a lucky number, so hopefully luck be on my side with these predictions. So here we go. Okay, I know I've said in previous episodes that I do wish for a vaccine. Frankly, I still would like to have a vaccine, but now the perspective has changed. Now I only hope that the vaccine will come just to silence all the white noise and all the panic that has been shoved down our throats for the last 4 months. Truthfully, a vaccine will work in the short term, but not the long term. Why? Because the virus will ultimately burn itself out to become just another common cold coronavirus that circulates year after year and that renders a vaccine useless. There was an article that I found recently that explores the history of the 4 common cold coronaviruses that recur every cold and flu season. OC43, NL63, 229E, and HKU1. Now, not much research has been done on coronaviruses in general, relatively speaking. Much of the attention regarding coronaviruses was brought up when the first SARS epidemic appeared in 2003. And just, for your information, coronaviruses have been researched since the 1960s. So we know more about the flu and measles and, any other, old viruses long before we started looking at coronaviruses. But basically, the theory in this article that I just mentioned, and I will certainly put the link below in the description, is that when these four coronaviruses first made their transitions into humans, perhaps centuries ago, they caused SARS-like pandemics. However, back then, no one would have thought that it was a different virus that caused these pandemics. In other words, nobody knew that such a thing like coronavirus existed. People back then only worried about the flu and tuberculosis, So it was very well possible that many people probably thought it was just an above average cold and flu season, when all that time they might have been dealing with a coronavirus. Talk about ignorance is bliss. In fact, the Russian flu pandemic of 1889 was a topic discussed, and it could have been, again, keyword could, because a lot of this article is more like one big giant theory that still needs to be researched, but that Russian flu pandemic could have been the OC43 common cold virus that we know today, but OC43 back then could have been the culprit and not an influenza. And no vaccine was around at that time, as you know, and obviously today, OC43 causes nothing more than your nuisance common cold. So simply put, the influenza will continue to be a much more dangerous disease well after COVID-19 fizzles out. The responsibility now falls on you to make sure that you stay healthy and you keep the others around you healthy. I'm like many of you. I want to be able to hug my friends, shake hands with new people that I meet, and be able to see faces again. After 333 days, it becomes so tiring to be living a life where everywhere you go you have to wear a mask and follow social distancing. By relaxing on these restrictions, there will hopefully be no more clashes with people who choose to wear a mask and those who choose not to. I'm a guy that felt overwhelmed in crowded places, and it's been that way even well before the coronavirus pandemic. But I always enjoyed any opportunity that I got to eat inside a restaurant. I think outdoor dining is here to stay for a while, but I sure do like to have indoor dining again. However, if indoor dining were to come back, masks shouldn't be a requirement. I mean, how could you enjoy dining if you have to constantly remove your mask to put food in your mouth? One of the things that really ached my heart during this pandemic is seeing school being done online. Now, for my day job, I am a private studio piano teacher, and it was so tough not only to be away from my students, but it just doesn't feel proper to be teaching lessons through a video screen. There's just too much limitations. While it might come in handy in a time like this, long term, it's just impossible. One of the hardships that I've had with teaching distance learning is that sometimes the student's camera may have audio problems, or that the quality will be grainy. There will also be lag. And plus, I don't have a notebook to write, to write notes down, and we are nowhere near being able to teleport anything. So, so obviously there's just so much, that is wrong, that distance learning online is just not really the proper way to go. Like, nothing beats live teaching. So the negatives outweigh the positives, in my opinion. And I also spoke to a cousin of mine who's going into high school this coming school year, and she says that distance learning is not effective at all. It did diddly squat to improve a student's knowledge. All that she was graded on was if the assignment was turned in on time. Sure, there are a lot of things that are broken in our education system today, but kids deserve to be taught with live instruction in person and deserve to see their friends again. And as for this upcoming school year, I would settle on this compromise. Have a mix of in-person and distance learning. Masks and social distancing required. Perhaps not go to school 5 days a week, but perhaps go in once every other day, like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and leave Tuesday and Thursday to be the distance learning. The irony of this pandemic is that the convenience of being able to get around in the world with ease is the same reason why the pandemic became widespread in a hurry. When you're in an airplane, the air that circulates around the cabin is recycled air, not to mention that you're packed in 100, 200 people inside a metal tube. It's no surprise that airplanes played a big part in planting the coronavirus seed around the world. However, flying is a necessity. There will always be a need for airplanes even well after the coronavirus. The airline industry, even though it's taken a hard hit now, will rebound, but will have to take extra precautions in the years after. But I still think that planes will be packed again. The industry will experience a very large, big boom with new hires, both pilots, flight attendants, and other personnel in the next 3 to 5 years. But masks may be the one thing that will still be required in the airplane, or recommended at the least. Also, after each flight, the plane will be deep cleaned to ensure that the next set of passengers are entering a clean aircraft. Medical records may also become part of the boarding process as well. And on a personal note, I love airplanes a lot. And I've traveled so much in my young life so far, especially going to the Philippines. And I want to continue that soon. And I haven't been in the Philippines for almost 10 years, and I certainly would like to enjoy that long red-eye flight again. And that's why I'm hoping that this particular prediction comes true in my 333 bet. I started to stock invest back on March 15th by downloading Robinhood, right around the time that places started to lock down and the recession started to hit. I didn't have a lot of money to start, but thanks to unemployment benefits, the fact that I was able to save a lot by not spending a lot, and now finally starting to get my clients back slowly, I was able to accumulate enough money to buy 1 share of Tesla and 1 share of Microsoft. Microsoft is leading the world in cloud computing, which I think will dominate this decade and beyond, which I think will be the reason why the stock will greatly increase as this decade goes on. And Tesla, I mean, look what they've done, just this year alone. And when this pandemic is over, look for Tesla to be a game changer, especially with my generation, the millennials, and Generation Z. People want electronic cars. That's the future right there. And overall, the economy will experience a resurgence unlike any other. People going back outside, people moving out, people moving in, the housing market's gonna rebound, with mortgages and everything. This will feel like the Roaring '20s all over again. Trust me on this. Once this is all over, it's gonna be the second edition of the Roaring '20s. This is important to remember, because a lot of why this pandemic feels very oppressive is really not so much the virus itself, but because of the response that we've given it. There are so many disagreements on different sides of the spectrum that we basically fell apart like a car in a cartoon that was sabotaged. Just look at Looney Tunes, for example, and you'll see what I mean. But we need to realize that getting sick is a part of life. New viruses will continue to make their way into humans over the course of decades and centuries, and it will cause pandemics. There are over 100 different rhinoviruses and 4 coronaviruses that cause the common cold. COVID-19 will become the 5th coronavirus that will cause the common cold in time. The influenza always shapeshifts every single year. And fortunately, we have a vaccine for that. Otherwise, that'll be something that we need to really, really be concerned at. If you want to stay hunkered down because people in the news are telling you that this is the worst thing to happen to all of us since the Spanish flu, then be my guest. But as for me, this coronavirus will not stop me from living life to the fullest. Yes, I still, I don't want to sound selfish, and I will still wear the mask. I will still practice social distancing, and I will try not to get myself sick, but that was only because I need to protect my parents, who I love dearly, and I still live with, and I cannot afford to see them get sick with this virus. Much of what I said just now could be interpreted as wishful thinking, and I realized that I shouldn't get ahead of myself that quickly. Graduations for next year's class will still be held with limited attendance, but at least it will be in person. At least I hope it will be in person. Music festivals like Coachella and South by Southwest may be canceled yet again, or at least run with limited attendance. And even the Olympics, supposed to be postponed till next year. Hopefully they will run, even if it means not having any attendees at the events. I'm just merely highlighting the date that I think is where we finally complete turning the corner. And like I said before, we as humans have experienced terrifying pandemics in the past. And while at the time they might have resulted in very ugly scenes in the city and, other places, eventually they overcame and life moved on and people started packing places again. If we can get the vaccine before the 333 days are up, that's awesome. But if we don't, I think you'll see that COVID-19 will lose a tremendous amount of its punch by next year. So rest assured, folks, there will be a happy ending to this.